Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk about a science fiction movie from 1976, and that would be Logan's Run, which you can see the poster right there, sort of, part of this DVD pack. So this film was based on a novel from 1967 by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. The film was directed by Michael Anderson, and it starred Michael York, Richard Jordan, Jenny Agutter, Roscoe Lee Brown, Farrah Fawcett Majors, and Peter Ustinov. So this film has a very unique premise where it's in the future and 23rd century to be specific. Everyone lives in domes and everyone is under the age of 30, okay? And once you turn 30, you basically have to go to another plane of existence as they're told. As we find out in the movie, though, they're actually being executed at the age of 30. So the whole theme of this movie, it's a play on that what they used to say in the 60s is never trust anyone over 30. The idea being that once you turn 30, you've lost all your idealism and all of your hope for the future. I guess everyone becomes realist cynics by the time of 30. That was like the idea at the time. You don't hear people say that today for the most part, but it was a thing in the 60s. Charlton Heston says it in Planet of the Apes. He tells one of the younger apes that. So yeah, everyone's living in domes, and inside it looks like a giant shopping mall where young people can do recreational drugs. They can have all sorts of sexual partners, and they don't really have anything. They have a purpose necessarily. They live for pleasure. Okay, with the caveat of that it all ends when you turn 30, as they say. There are people who run away when this happens because they're not quite buying the program of what they're saying. And the two main characters, Michael York, the main character, Logan, is a Sandman who his job is to chase down people who try to run or escape on their 30th birthday, along Richard Jordan, also his partner there. And he meets up with Jenny Agutter by the end of the film, and they sort of form a partnership between the two of them. So yeah, it is this world of everyone's living for pleasure. The rite of carousel is what happens when they turn 30, and the movie opens with this great sequence of almost like the Cirque du Soleil type thing, where everyone is kind of levitating in the air and seemingly burst into flames, and clearly, like I said, they're being killed. So kind of a dark undercurrent. Like, it's one of these movies where it appears to be utopia, but it's actually a dystopia type theme running through this film, which we see in a lot of classic science fiction with like Brave New World or The Time Machine, ideas like that. So Logan eventually has a change of consciousness, and eventually, with Jessica, tries to escape, which he's able to do. He discovers some dark truths about the robots who run the domes, and that they're freezing up some of the people who tried to escape. So I guess they're being used for food or something. Some shades of Soylent Green there. So they manage to escape, Jessica and Logan, and they end up in the ruins of Washington, D.C., where they encounter an old man played by Peter Ustinov, who doesn't really know much, really, but they've never seen an old person before. They walk through the Capitol and see the ruins of the government and things like that. And eventually Logan and Jessica go back to the domes and say, you don't have to live this way. We can have purpose to our lives and things like that. So the story ends on that upbeat note of liberation, I guess you could say. It's an odd movie on the level of it's about ageism. And, it's important to note that in the 1970s, the boomer generation was coming of age, starting to graduate college and get married and have children. So America was more of a youth driven society in the 1970s, and whether this film or story is a warning about putting too much faith in the youth, or what youth is capable of. And a lot of this, I think, goes back to Vietnam War and all the social movements of the 60s and into the 70s, which were, young people were a major part of those, and but there was also a backlash to young people speaking out and things like that. So I always pick up on a reactionary strain somewhat to this movie. Like I said, it is a plea for tolerance for people of any age, but it also feels like a corrective to putting all your faith in young people, which I don't agree with. We hear that today about young people speaking out, and older people can be condescending at times to if a new generation has different ways of thinking about things. So, the film is great for a discussion, I think, about those issues of age and young and old, and the dynamic there happening, and things like that, even between parents and children. So, yeah, interesting themes in the movie, great production design. Like I said, we're just a year away from Star Wars, where the genre was going to change quite a bit. This very much feels, Logan's Run, I should say, feels like very much an old school Hollywood science fiction movie. It was made by MGM with the big sets and the cast and all that. The special effects are good. There's some really interesting imagery throughout the film. So yeah, Logan's Run. It was made into a TV show, also in the late 70s. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of the TV show, which I think only aired for one season. And there's been much talk over the years to remake the film. This is one of those. It's many filmmakers have had the property and have tried to remake it, or I'm sure there's been many scripts written to redo this Logan's Run, and maybe someday, maybe a TV series, maybe that's the best way for this to go. And I could see some interesting themes coming out of a 2020s version of the story, but like I said, maybe TV would be the best place for it to go. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Logan's Run, kind of a time capsule from the 1970s. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye.